Hey, beautiful people. We are going to get this show on the road. Let's dive in. Let's go.
In the mirror on the restroom door. Voices in her head that mirror what she's heard before.
Hey, beautiful people. I hope you guys are good. I'm trying to optimize, guys, but it's happening. Just not as the Virgo rising of me would actually like, but we're moving nonetheless, right? I'm literally back from like the day job, guys. Okay. Your girl's just out here doing the most, but I wanted to be able to come into the space. I'm trying to sort of like activate everything as far as coming into this class. How's everybody doing? How do you guys feel? We've got a lot going on this week. We've got a lot going on this week. So how's everyone feeling? How's hump day? Sort of like, what's the sitch, right? Where are we as far as the week at the minute? I wanted to be able to come into this space tonight to sort of discuss the Mercury retrograde, to give us some insight maybe in terms of what may be unfolding for you in your personal experience as well, because I'm actually going to share the link if I can get a minute to do that. I'm going to share the link and you guys can sort of like stop into the space if you want to be present. You don't have to be on live. And you can actually... we can soundboard. You can ask questions. We can go back and forth, and we can talk about it. You can ask me some questions as far as like some personal stuff that you feel like, you know, how's Mercury going to impact you personally? Because we've got a lot going. Like, I feel like Mercury's been setting us up for the most, not in a bad way, okay? Because I feel like Mercury gets a lot of slack because we don't know how to communicate. And then we start to get a little bit frustrated with Mercury when Mercury's like, no, this is how you do it. Do it like this. If you do it from this place with this type of energy, this may be the results that you sort of like manifest as a result of that. But a lot of the times we want to kind of like be mediocre and kind of like have very grandiose expectations. You know how that goes? Hashtag human. We can't help ourselves, but nonetheless, I think this Mercury retrograde has been set up from like a couple moons back, from the intuitive sort of like guidance that I'd been getting sort of coming into the space today, because I haven't actually been able to sort of look at the chart. I'm going to look at the chart live, I guess, whilst we're in this space as well, and give you guys, I guess, live downloads and feedback in terms of what I see in the chart with this Mercury retrograde energy. Just thinking about the build-up coming into the Mercury retrograde. Speaking of which, right? Mercury is going retrograde in my 5th house. I'm going to tell y'all how that is playing out for moi. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to put that into context, just so that you guys understand what Mercury can really do for your life. Because I feel like, again, these retrogrades get slack, but they're basically just trying to tell us where we're sort of slacking, where we're loose in places, and they're trying to help us tighten that up, right? But we want to do, like I said, mediocre in classes and then have these grandiose expectations. So first thing that I want to sort of like speak about, obviously we had the Aries new moon, I guess, sort of like coming into this season that we're in at the minute. To be fair, that was sort of like towards the back end of March. Let me just bring that up as well. Bear with me, guys. I'm kind of like looking at everything to put it all into full context. just so that I can give you guys all of the awesome downloads that they were actually sort of like having a conversation with me today, because it was like, whoa, there's so much going on. Okay, so the last new moon that we had in Pisces, it actually sort of went into in Aries. It went into Aries around about 5:22. So just the vibration of the numerology in that alone, it's like 5 is such a challenging class to sit. I'm not gonna lie. 5 is a challenging class to sit. Love 5. It's very much about changing, but for signs that generally tends to be quite fixed in their ability to, adapt, they would find that type of energy a little bit of a challenge, right? Because now it's about sort of like adapting and juggling and prioritizing management, right? That's what 5 teaches in terms of like the class whenever we're dealing with any sort of numerology where there's the context of that. So we were learning how to master our ability to prioritize just based on the dynamics of the Aries new moon, sort of like, again, leading into the Mercury retrograde that we've got coming on April 21st. I was actually going to say the new moon that we had was exactly a month ago on March 21st. Oh my God. This is why they said that to me then, because now my ear's burning. Now they're here. They're about to give us all the tea, guys. Okay. So literally fully a month ago, we had this energy kind of like preparing us, like it was kind of like preparing and gossip behind the scenes. That's how they're putting it, right? Spirits were conspiring. That's how they're putting it to me. The spirit was conspiring to kind of like lead us into a certain transit for this Mercury retrograde. So what do I mean by that? The Aries new moon that happened, that was really trying to teach us how to master our subconscious as well, because we moved literally from the Pisces energy, which is all about the pineal gland and activation. So we were actually being given the opportunity to go within those subconscious, I guess, files to pick at the things that we weren't necessarily optimized in and start some new cycles in doing those things where maybe the old cycle didn't really give us the opportunity to be able to kind of optimize in that kind of environment with that type of climate, astrologically speaking. But this time, this Aries new moon was like, right, all of that, you actually have all of these qualities. Firstly, I'm going to say to you, first thing you need to know is where Mercury is actually sort of going retrograde in Taurus. So where is Mercury in your natal chart, right? If you understand what house Mercury is in your natal chart, you will understand what area of your life is going to take a significant sort of like shifting during this period. And it's actually already started from last month. Since the 21st of March, there's been things that have been going on within your environment to set you up for the, oh my God, I can't even explain to you guys. The way that they're giving me this energy is like, oh my, listen, Mercury is doing the most for us at the minute, right? But it's whether or not we can utilize this energy. So like I said, go and if you don't already know, check out and see where Mercury is in terms of what house Mercury is in your natal chart. That way you can figure out how to be able to optimize the energy of that particular house. We're going to have a discussion about some of those things as well to just break it all down so that you guys can have a little bit of an understanding of how it might impact the different houses, right, individually. Like the first house, second house, all that kind of stuff, because Mercury for me is in my 5th house. So I'm going to talk to you guys, like I said, about that. So where the Aries new moon was actually sort of taking place around about that time, it was giving us an opportunity to be able to kind of come to full realization, plant new seeds, right? That's what we should have been doing during, March 21st, right, the way up to now this season, going into April 21st, right? Because Mercury is going to be retrograde in Taurus from April 21st to May 14th. And then we're going to have the post-shadow period up until around about the 28th, I want to say. Because obviously it's a couple of weeks, right? Afterwards that we have the post-shadow period, and we have been navigating through the pre-shadows of Mercury retrograde actually for quite some time. We've been navigating through those energies for the last couple of weeks. I want to say since let's have a look. Yeah, we've been navigating that since around about the first week of April, just kind of giving us an opportunity to be able to start preparing for class, getting our ish together, right? I don't know what you guys are like in terms of your ability to communicate, but your ability to articulate dialect in terms of being able to communicate your internal realm externally, that's going to be put on blast, right? That's number one, okay, because Mercury generally wants to be able to bring anything that is sitting and festering that is no longer serving us to the surface. So be mindful of creating new karma during this climate as well, because this is like demon time. I'm not going to lie to y'all, okay? Obviously, when Mercury goes retrograde, it's a lot of our blocked emotions are going to sort of come out in a lot of the times. If we're not very good at expressing ourselves, that will show up as emotional eruptions. And we will be likely to have flare-ups, especially if we have contracts with the spirit of anger. The spirit of anger is very rife during the Mercury retrograde. The spirit of resentment also latches on to these energies. Those types of forces become very prevalent in this type of environment. It's like a breeding ground, because they're like, okay, who can I attach to? I know there's somebody that's kind of waiting for stuff. Low self-esteem as well. So they'll kind of like play with different aspects of self. Hey, Ash. Hey, beautiful. Hey, Sammy. I don't know if you're actually still in the room because you did sort of stop in earlier. I just kind of dived straight into it because my ear was burning. So the guys are here. They want to be able to kind of like deliver, I guess, in terms of what's coming for this Mercury retrograde. So I just kind of dive straight in, right? Because I BTW, y'all. Funny moment, guys. Hold on. Hold that channel. Okay, stick a pin in it. Your girl forgot to put the memo out, so forgive me for that, but I am optimizing, right? Delayed, not denied, okay? Hashtag Mercury retrograde energy. That's, oh my God, that's what we're dealing with. Hashtag delayed, not denied. That's the season that we're in for this Mercury retrograde, and that's what happens a lot of the times, right? The planets, they're on their motion, and they're like, getting on with their day, and then they're like, whoa, I forgot that back there, let me go and get that. So there's a lot of seeds that you would have planted. I'm going to say this to you as well. Like I said, it depends on what house your Mercury is in, but in terms of optimizing during this season, if you can identify basically areas within that same house, because I'm going to unpack that a little bit, like the different houses and how Mercury retrograde is going to sort of like impact that, considering we're dealing with it in Taurus. Ain't we lucky? We are lucky, okay? This is bomb. I'm liking this, right? Okay, so obviously Taurus is going to help us to be able to sort of like stabilize in terms of the energies. And this again will, however, mean, because they're giving it to me raw, live channeling. This will, however, mean that we will, anywhere we're not stable, we also have to be mindful that there's a price to pay for those failed classes as well. That's how I'm receiving it. They said that there's a price to pay for those failed classes as well, because you know, we have to be mindful of spirits speaking about fair feelings, because those are your intimate thoughts expressing themselves to you, right? And listen, our demons need loving too, okay? It's just about how we're able to manage those parts of ourselves, okay? Those traumatized, unhealed, unresolved, compressed beings, okay, within our entire being, because these were moments where we've been certain places and been in certain emotions and been in certain mindsets, and we stayed fixed in those reality. So during this Mercury retrograde, we're actually going to get an opportunity to optimize some of those genetically speaking. Okay. And also it's about giving us an opportunity to figure out how we can sort of like work through stabilizing our ability to kind of like preserve ourselves, because a lot of our demons, obviously, we know that that stems from the primitive state of being, right? When we feel threatened, when we feel vulnerable, when we feel that our safety is basically at risk, we have a tendency to kind of flare up, and we then, in some cases, if we're not careful, we can actually burn a lot of bridges during the Mercury retrogrades, okay, with very hasty decisions. So decisions, let's pause, okay, let's stick a pin in it. And even if you've made a decision in that moment, just know that you can pray on the situation, receive your download, and move accordingly, because I've already experienced, it looks like this Mercury retrograde energy is going to be moving so quickly, in terms of being able to stabilize all of the variables that are basically just like unhinged timelines that haven't necessarily anchored themselves into some of the things that you're trying to manifest. So Mercury is actually helping you to stabilize a lot of your hanging blessings that aren't necessarily like where you had hoped they would be. Let's put it like that, right? So with the Aries new moon a month ago, kind of like giving us an opportunity to master adaptability. Guess what this means now? Remember, I said that the theme of this Mercury retrograde in Taurus is delayed, not denied. That means a lot of hanging blessings are going to be coming in all at once. That part, right? And Jupiter actually helped to set us up for this as well, because I think Jupiter actually shifted its transit. I think it was last week, if I'm not mistaken. Right. So Jupiter's also helping. Jupiter's like, whoa, Mercury, I see what you're trying to do for the collective. Oh, let me join in. That's the best way that I can explain it, because that's how they're putting it to me, right? Mercury's actually leading this transit, because Mercury basically like subconsciously communicated to Jupiter what its intention was. Mercury's like, oh snap, we're moving this direction, but I think I got to go back there to go and get this. I got to get this. I got to get this. So all of these things are going to actually start coming into manifestation for a lot of you guys. Like I said, depending on where Mercury is in your natal chart, it's going to be showing up particularly in that house. Again, pros and cons. I'm going to speak to you guys about some of the pros and cons that I'm experiencing with Mercury in my 5th house, just so that you guys can get a full scope and understanding of what it is that I'm trying to say and how this may impact like your optimizing process, right? Because this is all intended for us to be able to obviously optimize the ascension process, for the collective. You know, this is what evolution looks like. Okay. It's a process, y'all. So yeah, all of those hanging blessings, I want to say, if we're dealing with Aries new moon energy, oh wow, they're saying to me that this is all the way even back into Aries last year. So that, oh, thank y'all, thank you. I'm about to say thank you, Jesus. Okay. I feel so blessed already. So the dialogue on that situation, okay, just so you guys know, I don't know, I'm going to keep my noise down, because we spoke about Martin, my neighbor, before, and he'd been going around telling all the other neighbors that I'm loud and I'm on the phone late at night, which I'm not. I'm actually here in my lives, but the perception of the way that I look, if you understand what I mean, I live in a predominantly middle class, I guess, area. I'll put it like that, so y'all get what I mean. And that's I'm navigating through some of that space and energy, and I'm going to tell you guys how this 5th house, because obviously this is to do with my creativity. So I'm telling you guys because Martin just knocked, okay? And I'm going to be real careful because it's after 10 at the minute, and Martin is an elderly. I respect him, but I pay my own bills. So I'm going to obviously do what I need to do, but I'm going to obviously be able to respect that space. So if you guys do hear me go low at any time and you guys can't hear me, let your girl know so I can raise the decibels. Okay, that part. But I'm really going to unpack that for you guys, because there's so much activation that's going on for me personally. I want to tell you guys so that you guys can understand how your activations could be playing out for you depending on the different houses, because we're going to unpack that as well, right? So after we had because we've been dealing with like a year's worth of delayed blessings, basically, like for the last year, a lot of things that we've been working on. For some people it could be 3 years back, so I'm hearing 1 to 3 years. They're saying technically 1 to 3 years because some people basically had a downtime during COVID, and because obviously we had detention. Okay, Earth got detention. That's what COVID was. Okay, we weren't doing our work, so God put us in a timeout. Okay, so we could all go and catch up on stuff that we hadn't been doing. That's what was necessary for this shift that you see happening, where the collective were openly speaking about our feelings, because everybody was like going through deep depression during COVID because people didn't know how to sit within themselves if they weren't already experienced at doing that, right? God put the earth on pause, like all of that matrix stuff where things are constantly going, let's stick a pin in that. Time is going to cease to exist as it was, and let's just start afresh, right? So God did that for us. Great stuff. So for some of us, this is stuff that was due to you back in 2020, but God had to give you the 2020 vision, boo. God had to like put those specs on so you can really see like his vision for this, blueprint that you kind of had in mind, so that he can kind of like really give you perspective on the whole situation, right? Because this is your ideal over here, but God's like, no. I got this child to think about, that child to think about, that child to think about, that child to think about. So technically this is actually the plan. So this is what we're going to run with. Download that and let's keep it moving, right? So that's honestly where the situation kind of like is, I guess, at the minute, in terms of us being able to integrate. So that's the request. God, whatever house you are in, God is asking a personal favor at the minute. And when I say favor, I mean you choosing your free will to actually align yourself with his intent for your life. Okay, because sometimes when our intentions is very self oriented, when God is doing certain things in our lives, we tend to be resistant, and we're like, look at what the universe is doing to me, as opposed to look at what God is doing for me, right? So when we're kind of like navigating through some of those classes, I guess, during the next, let's say till the end of May, we're going to be navigating class till the end of May, right? We had, after the actual Aries new moon, we actually had the Libra full moon as well. And that Libra full moon was also helping to give us the opportunity to bring things into balance in terms of our partnerships, right? It was helping us to bring things in balance in terms of business, romantic relationship dynamics, and friendships. So basically a lot of those areas were already being purged because that was a Libra full moon. So we were already releasing all of the stuff that wasn't necessarily serving us within those particular areas. So that's the class that we're actually navigating collectively, even coming into this Mercury retrograde in Taurus as well. Interestingly enough, right, we do actually, depending on where you are, obviously, for us here in the UK, the new moon is actually tomorrow for us here in the UK. But I think for some of you guys that are on universal time, it's actually a little bit different for you guys. You're experiencing the energies for today as far as the Aries/Taurus new moon, because technically it happens in Aries again and then really quickly sort of like shifts over into Taurus, which again, if you think about it, right, I don't need to touch too much on the Libra full moon. They're saying like that was just really to bring balance into these new beginnings as far as this new environment that we're going to be set up in. But this Aries new moon, Aries/Taurus new moon, it's a solar eclipse. They're like, you guys don't even understand the way that our egos are going to get a complete overhaul. It's like the way that you have been at a cellular level is going to be shifted in terms of your romantic dynamics, in terms of your business situations, that's going to look a little bit different, like I said, and your friendships have already been through a test, but you're still going to be navigating through the actual offset of those situations prior to, right? So be mindful of that, be aware of that. So again, the way that that might show up is in different dynamics as well. When we're talking about friends, like colleagues can be friends. So we might go through conflicting situations where the friendship within the colleague dynamic situations like, oh, I'm questioning this, or, oh my God, we've gotten so much deeper into our connection from shared trauma, because that's what's going to happen. That's what's been happening as these kind of new dynamics have been coming to surface, right? In terms of the Aries new moon kind of like bringing these new situations basically for us to observe. We have to review them. It's review season. We were supposed to be reviewing them because that was review season, because we were supposed to be studying for the exams. That is supposed to be Mercury retrograde, but that's what we're doing here, y'all. Don't worry, okay? We're like somewhat revising as far as making sure that we take some notes. So that solar eclipse is basically going to give us an opportunity to right the wrongs of any poor decisions that we've actually made in terms of finances. Because obviously Taurus is the second house. It's to do with savings. Firstly, we would naturally equate that to finances because that's how that, I guess, transmits here, okay, in terms of dialogue. But also it's actually about our ability to sort of like preserve our energy and where we're placing our energy and where we're sort of like placing our focus when it comes to certain situations. So we have to be mindful, because this is where the demons get us, y'all, okay? Because the class is so astute, right? It's very astute. So if you miss even the smallest of detail with this situation, you might find yourself basically in a situation where you're navigating through one poor decision in this climate that you're going to have to pay for at least the next 10 months, potentially maybe up to 2 years, depending on how bad the decision is. Okay, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. If we're making decisions that is going to be impacting us over the course of the next 10 months, up to about 2 years, depending on how much we can cultivate that, how much nurturing we can give to that, how much positive words of affirmations, how much action, how much positive emotional sort of like attitude we give to the situation, even as we meet resistances, right? That's the dynamic that we're actually going to be navigating through as we're moving through this Mercury retrograde transit. So what I'd say to you guys, if you don't know what house Mercury's in, if you don't know like your actual time of birth and stuff, within the collective, we're actually already navigating through Mercury being retrograde in our second house. So you're naturally going to be sitting that class anyways. That's the group class. And then you've got to go to your one-to-one, okay, with a guidance counselor. Guidance counselor for this season is Mercury. And Mercury is going to be helping us to hash things out when it comes to our ability to communicate about the things that we aren't necessarily happy with when it comes to material possessions, because that's definitely an aspect of Taurus. We are going to be navigating through like our rigid tendencies, because Taurus energy can be quite it's quite sensitive. Actually, they say stubborn. That's how the reaction of it sort of like appears to be, but it's actually it's because it's sensitive. It's quite a sensitive energy to navigate. So it means that the climate is very, very, very sensitive. If you imagine, right, how difficult is it for you to maintain stability? Do you see what I'm saying? That's how sensitive it is. Do you see what I'm saying? Like stability is a challenge basically to actually like keep consistently. And with it being in Taurus, the challenge for us in this Mercury retrograde is really going to be asking us, we're going to have to shed layers of our ego, which means that we're going to be meeting resistance, okay? And these resistances are basically things that you thought that you wouldn't do, that you thought that you couldn't do. And Mercury is saying, actually, you have the potential to do this if you're able to operate from this frequency instead. First, you have to be able to observe the signs within the environment, praying on it. I'm telling you guys, like, I shit you not, I say this all the time, every time I do any sort of lives, but that's because prayer of manifestations, like one of my biggest tools, just in general in navigating anything. Okay, because as we sort of like move through these energies, we need to understand, okay, why is God allowing for Mercury to kind of like take the lead in this way, and have Jupiter kind of like go back and say, okay, I'm going to cover you. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, because that's what's happening at the minute. Mercury is going back to basically fight for our right to get these blessings that have been delayed for us, basically, seeing as we were in timeout. And Jupiter's like, okay, I'm going to cover you as you go back and, assist them in all of these things that they felt like they wanted, but they weren't ready yet, but they have done some work to some degree. So you're going to get your blessings manifested to the degree of work that you have done. Let me make this very clear, because if you ain't done shit, you can't expect shit. I gotta say that, okay? I just gotta put that out there because they're saying that to be very direct. My guys are very direct. Yeah, you guys know this by now. So if you have done, again, they're saying that those of us who were doing like mediocre in certain classes, we can expect our mediocre results. But then that doesn't mean that we have to keep those results, because in this season, we get to reset the class almost straight away. Okay, we get the opportunity to right the errors of our perception in the situation, which will then give us an opportunity to be able to benefit from what's actually manifesting in this season. Okay. I'm going to put it to you because I'm conscious of time, because your girl can talk. You guys know I can talk. So at this point, I'm going to sort of move into the next context, because they're like, okay, move on to, because I have to go through all of the different houses for you guys. I didn't like coming into this space, didn't necessarily even have preparation as such. They just said to me, look, we'll be downloading into you what needs to be delivered to the collective for this space. That's how we're going to be doing, I guess, these podcasts and utilizing the space. I'm literally just a conduit. I'm just a vessel, y'all. So to put it into perspective for you guys, right? If you know where Mercury is in your chart, for me, like I said, it's in my 5th house. A few areas that it's actually, okay, so my 5th house is going to be shaken up. My 5th house, obviously, the 5th house is the house of creativity. It's the house of sort of like expression of self, basically, right? That's where you're able to kind of like really put your creative, what's in here, you're able to project that out there and basically paint a picture for everyone to understand who you are, basically, by the way that you're able to sort of deliver, right? The 5th house for myself, as I'm navigating through that, because I'm here with you guys, obviously, this is my creative expression of self, and that's impacting my neighbor. Okay, so those are some of the positives, because I'm now optimizing in this space, right? I'm optimizing in this space. I'm coming to class. I'm following up on my assignments. Your girls even managed to do a content planner so that I can be on a schedule. They done sat me down and let me know what the situation is. But some of the side effects of being able to optimize is that my optimization and my light shining brighter comes with consequences where it's irritating the demons of my neighbor, who is seeking his own peace within his own environment, right? And he feels like I'm doing the most, basically, and he's being tormented. So you have to understand, now I'm in a battlefield, basically. I'm in a battlefield just because I'm wanting to actually optimize. Something is now coming in. I'm going to have to navigate that space, right? I'm going to wrap that up and, cover egos and stuff like that, because my ego is triggered. I was like, homeboy don't pay my bills. But I get it, okay? Homeboy pays his bills as well, and homeboy is okay to actually like ask for what he deserves as well. And he's an elder, he's been here a lot longer than I have. So, I mean, he's withstood a lot more. Like, who am I to judge? So that, just to sort of like put it into context for you guys. Now, another area in terms of creativity, right? Hey, Smaradina, beautiful. Nice to have you in this space. In terms of my creativity, very artistic. That's actually something that I'm able to sort of like integrate into work, basically. I've got an opportunity to optimize in that space, got a new job. homegirl just came back from the new job today. But it turns out that Jupiter, because Jupiter is also helping Mercury during this optimization channel that we're in at the minute. Now I got 2 jobs plus my actual, like, this is essentially my business, right? I do what I do for the sheer fact of love at the minute, but I'm working into like the model of everything that me and God discussed, like basically in 2019 before 2020 happened, right? So I get why they said the timeline they did. But it's one of those things, even as I was trying to leave what I thought was my Aries new moon, like, you know, this new lease of life, I still got put back on assignment because when I prayed on it, God said go back. I thought God said go, but God said go over here to set the space and go back so that you can finish this space a lot more healthily, because that's what's happening as well. If God puts you in a position in any place where you feel like you are being put in resistance again, because stubborn energy, Taurus, right? You're being put in a place where you're just being boxed in. It's because he's actually got you in an incubator. Actually, you're in your cocoon, and your butterfly moment is going to come a little bit later where you're fully bloom, right? And it's just one of those things where God's being very careful with you. That's all it is. You know, like a caterpillar, it goes from an earth animal, if you will, or an earth insect to an air sort of tribe, I guess, an air insect. And it's one of those things where if God's going to take you from one state of being to the next, that requires an alchemy process. So if you are making decisions and you see that you've made a hasty decision, this is what I said to you earlier. If you've made a hasty decision, this is the window where you've got the opportunity to make, I guess, like, because the spirit of confusion is going to be rife, it's almost as well an opportunity, because that is what happens a lot of the times. The spirit of confusion comes in and then it filters our perspective and we start to think from our feelings, basically. We start to see from our feelings, I should say, and think from our feelings. So you've got to be mindful as well when you're making decisions indecisively, because there's, even when you have a yes, you probably also have a part of yourself that has a counterpart manifesting. That's a no as well. Okay. So you're becoming aware of all of these aspects of yourself that is basically in resistance to what it is that you're trying to manifest. And during this process, if you know exactly where Mercury is in your chart, it will give you an opportunity to see where you're going to get the most from this actual transit, right? Another area with this 5th house, my Venus and my node is actually also in my 5th house. So those 2 aspects of my life is actually going to be impacted well, because my 5th house is going to be shaken up. And that's what you can expect for whatever house Mercury's in for yourself, basically, right? It's going to be shaken up. So any other planets that you have or astral sort of bodies that you have in that house in general is going to be shaken up. So romance class, I can expect to sit some stuff in that area as well as just being able to go deep within my shadow side, because that's what needs to come up and out, you know, with all the experiences that's going to be shifting in my node as well. So interestingly enough, one area that I can already sort of like put across that the node is like really being purged and being purified is my dynamic. So I'm obviously my mum, I get my gifts from my mum's side to some degree, and my dad's side has certain qualities as well I'm learning. So my mum doesn't really like doing all of this stuff, but I do. Okay, so that's why I volunteered. I was like, me. God was like, oh, I don't think she wants to do it. I was like, me. It looked fun to me, even though it came with its own challenges of actually like being this version, basically. And what I'm even sort of identifying is that as I grow in my career as well, I'm moving through some of those generational demons. So I'm getting activated deep within my node, as far as like my genetics of everything. And that's why I'm telling you guys to understand exactly what house Mercury is in your chart, and then understand that house any other astral bodies that is also in that house is going to be shaken as well, because it's being impacted by this shift that is occurring with Mercury and this conversation that Jupiter's doing together to try and, I guess, give us what we're due, basically. Okay. What I want to speak about as well, now I kind of want to go into like the different houses as far as like where Mercury might be. I'm not too sure if anybody wants to sort of like come in now or afterwards, but we'll kind of figure it out. If you guys have any questions, if you guys want to put anything out there, I pop the link in the group chat so you guys can sort of like come in and sit in the back end of the studio before I kind of put you on. If you are interested, just want to put that out there, because I do want to develop this space, I guess, where people can come on and be like having an open dialogue about, you know, what's going on basically for them within this class. We're going to be going more into those things, but the optimizing is happening. We're not there yet. I've already seen the 2-year timeline of where all of this could potentially be. So we're moving, team. We're moving. We're gonna be out here in these YouTube streets officially. We need to get a name for ourselves as well, gang. Okay, that part, because that's a thing apparently, and that will help us with our manifesting as well. Okay, and by the time everybody gets here to where we're at, we're gonna be like, where y'all been at? Because that's how I felt in COVID. Like, where y'all been at? I've been sat here waiting for y'all since 2018 when I got called to start doing work, and it was like, no, you ain't got no more like free time that you can say, oh, dog ate my homework, or you can't be asked to do this. Like, you're optimized, you're conscious enough to be able to like do the process aware now. So it's one of those types of dynamics, right? Get what you can from it. So if you're experiencing the retrograde this season, obviously in the collective, we're going to be experiencing it in Taurus, but wherever Mercury is, if it's in the first house for you, obviously Mercury is going to be taking you back. First house is all about sort of self. It's all about the outward sort of like identification of self, as well as the internal dialogue of self as well. So this is mainly going to be intense in terms of the physiology for you. You might find yourself navigating through bouts of anxiety that is definitely likely to be triggered intensely. Your nervous system might be very shot during the process of the next few weeks. So I would definitely advise that you start optimizing in some breathing techniques to be able to relieve any tension that might be traveling through your channels, your meridian channels, as well as your veins as well. Obviously, the blood is a reflection of the actual energy as well and how it's flowing, right? When we get blood clots, it's a physical manifestation of spiritual clots. That's when we've got like entities that we're attached to, that are attached to us. Like it's all a mirroring thing, just on different layers, basically, of degrees of reality, pretty much, right? So your self-image and how you see yourself is basically going to be going through an overhaul, which means that you may be sort of like, you may be seeing the shadow side of yourself more than, hey mama, my mom's in the chat. You may be experiencing your shadow side triggered more than you would everybody else around you. If they're not experiencing it, like the Mercury retrograde in their first house, you're going to feel like, oh my God, can nobody else feel this? They don't understand what I'm feeling. Why don't they get it? You know, it will start to be like a lot of those unfair dialogue, basically. So if you have Mercury in your first house, be mindful, because that dialogue is very easily fixed with spirits of depression, basically. Because when you start having discussions about unfair, you know, oh, this has been unfair or that's been unfair, it's very easy for depression to come and start like, yeah, and this as well, and this as well, and this as well. Whilst you're there trying to figure out like how to dig yourself out of where you already are, depression's already present, and depression's already feeding itself off your low vibration in that state. So just be mindful. I'm not saying don't process anything. I'm just saying don't sit there for too long. And depression actually really helped me to manifest this new job. Actually, I sat there for I observed it for 3 days. I sat there for 2 days. And then I did something about it because I needed to kind of like give it the time to be able to nurse itself. another thing as well, these are your demons as well. Like obviously other people's demons, when they get projected, handle that accordingly as well. Like it's a reflection of yourself. Exactly how you would like somebody to treat your demons, that's how you treat that demon. Guess why? Because Jupiter is going to remember that when he gets, you know, to where he's going, and Mercury say, you know, right, Jupiter, remember that time when you paid me that favor when I went to go back in Taurus to go and sort out all of my possessions, all of my material goods, all of my things that weren't necessarily grounded in terms of my ability to be able to stabilize, so that the collective can reflect my energy in terms of their ability to be able to communicate. Remember that time when you did that for me? It's time for me to pay up for you now as well. Right. And then Mercury will lend its support to something that Jupiter is doing to be able to sort of bless our space as well. That's when you'll be able to obviously get the compensation. They're saying the compensation for whatever it is that you're giving off in this space during this climate at the minute, right? So if you're dealing with the self stuff, it's not personal, it's just personally, this is all very personal to you. And that's all it is right now, because Mercury is asking you personally, why do you feel this way? Why does this trigger you? Why is it that your first go-to spirit in this area of life is to be triggered by anxiety? Why is it not confidence as opposed to low self-esteem? Like Jupiter's asking us to go in with Mercury to have a one-to-one, basically. Like Mercury is the guidance counselor at the minute for us as we're sitting this season, right? So we're being asked to kind of like go within and really get a little bit more of a deeper understanding about ourselves in that area and what is actually going on internally and why. That's the main thing. Like Mercury wants you to know why, and that's why Jupiter's kind of like assisting as well with the process, right? If you're dealing with it in your second house, so if Mercury's in your second house, you're dealing with like serious, like you got some serious like activation as far as like money matters that are going to be coming into manifestation for you. It's either you've been poor with your classes around money, and not just physical money as far as like the currency money, but also the way that you think about money, your relationship with money, as far as the power that money has over you. Like, how do you see yourself amongst money? What does money give or take away to you in terms of your identity to be able to reflect your best self? How do you place value on yourself in comparison to the bank balance that you've got in your account? Do you see what I'm saying? All of these factors are going to be very, 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 very deep for you, particularly because you're getting this double energy. You're going to sit it in collective class and you're also sitting it in your individual class. So that in itself is going to be a lot going on with your physiology, right? You may find yourself sowing seeds in terms of your own business aspects and situations, right? We already discussed this. This is what the Libra full moon was for. It was releasing anything that wasn't necessarily serving us in business as well, right? And we were given the opportunity to be able to kind of understand what needs to be done differently moving forward. So when you're sowing seeds during this Mercury retrograde, this is a great time for you to actually be able to, like, I wouldn't say start anything new. I wouldn't say start anything new. And when I say anything new, I mean utilize pieces of yourself that you've already been utilizing. So, like I said, I just had my first day at my new job today, because I'm sitting that second class in the collective class, right? But I'm sitting Mercury retrograde in my individual class in my fifth house. So my second class, right? I did get the job started today, but I also had to be able to phase out my other job to be able to kind of like manage the process so that I don't have a harsh karmic backlash with the situation later on. Because I think when God said go, God was like go, but then he needed me to be able to like not look back. But then it was like I had to come back because it was like, oh, the karma isn't actually all the way clean in this situation because they're still liable in a situation basically. And this gives me an opportunity to earn some positive karma moving forward. So that's how you utilize the energy. That's how you optimize yourself with the energy. So I give that to you as a opportunity to put things into context. If you're sitting this class in your individual house as well as the collective class, I would say this is an opportunity for you to follow up on any transferable skills that you have in business and actually being able to duplicate that in a capacity that is going to be able to allow you to extract more financial savings, because Jupiter and Mercury and Saturn, actually, and Pluto, they're saying as well, are actually having this conversation. Uranus is making sure that everything happens spontaneously. It has to be sporadic, basically, for it to be believable to the actual optimizing process, because we're fighting through our own resistance about our belief system, pretty much, basically, when it comes to that. A lot of us have really bad habits when it comes to money management and savings and how we have our relationship with money, and those things will be tested. So for those of you guys who have it like individual class and collective class, there's something that you deeply need to learn during this cycle in order to be able to kind of have God bless you in the way that he's trying to bless you. I think it's one of those things where God's almost saying, you know, it's actually here, it's you're actually holding this pot back because you're not doing what needs to be done to actually like bring the pot down. It's like how I had to basically get my schedule together, get my life together. I've been optimizing the lazy personality, even though people say that I'm not lazy in their eyes for myself in terms of my standard and my potential and knowing the capacity that I have. I'm lazy. So now I have a lot more to do, basically, right? And this is a perfect climate to be able to support the optimizing of that so that it can be stable moving forward. That's the type of stuff that I'm talking about. If there's any business plans that you've been putting off, that you've been actually trying to do for a while, if there's not necessarily a situation where if there's money involved and you feel like you're not necessarily there to be able to do that, because I'm hearing that that's a lot of some people's hold up in a lot of situations, and God's like, you don't need money to get started, you need self. You actually need to get going. You need to start taking the first steps. You need to start doing whatever you can do to be able to kind of position yourself. What are the things that you can do now in this moment towards a change that you're trying to actually manifest, right? Hence, I'm in this space, starting the podcast for us whilst we're in this climate so that we can optimize the space as well, to be able to really grow something. Do you understand? I'm putting it into context so that you guys can understand where I'm coming from. If you are having Mercury retrograde in your third house, right? I should probably actually be making like banners and stuff for these so that you guys can actually see. Okay, Mercury retrograde in third house. Let me create one. Mercury retrograde in third house, right? There you go. So with Mercury retrograde in third house, that's to do with communication, right? And that's particularly to do with communication with siblings and neighborhood, basically, right? So it's one of those things where, again, you saw what was going on with my neighbor Martin as I'm optimizing in my fifth house. You might actually just have a direct situation with a neighbor where their demons are triggered in the situation and they're flaring up, and it might cause your demons to be triggered or vice versa. You might be the one that's triggered and you go into a space with your neighbor and all of a sudden, you know, that energy, that spirit starts to basically feed in the environment that you're sharing with that person. Also, because it's navigating through communication with siblings as well, what I would say is check yourself before you wreck yourself. Okay, if you've got any unresolved issues with siblings, those wounds are likely to fester during this Mercury retrograde if you're actively having it in your third house for your individual class. So sibling rivalry will show up. Competitive natures will start to actually sort of manifest as a result of that. to kind of show you guys where you actually are with situations as well, and give you guys an opportunity to choose love over everything else that you guys may be navigating through, right? Just so that you can see really where you are at in terms of yourself. Because we think that we're one way, and then our behavior says that we're actually, this is where we really are at. And again, being able to communicate as well, when you're dealing with Mercury retrograde in your third house, it really is one of those things as well. Like, this is an opportunity for you to be able to communicate, not just from a place of love, but also for you to be able to articulate your own needs and desires as well, because that's the thing that Mercury is kind of like asking for. Mercury is like, well, you know what? If you feel that way, let's talk about it. Let's sort it out. Let's have a conversation. Let's see if we can get to a resolve. You know, it's one of those situations when you're triggered, you kind of have to decide definitively how you want to actually respond to the situation instead of just reacting, because the reaction is going to get you a subverse reaction. Basically, you're just going to keep going round and round in cycle, because now the spirit is going to be in that space, basically feeding off as many bodies as it can afford. So whoever else you kind of like project the energy to, they will also be a meal. There'll be a sacrificial lamb, pretty much, for whatever entity you're actually moving through the space with that communication. So if you are carrying past resentments, that spirit of resentment is then going to see you go into a space, and you're going to be having battles with other people's resentments about things that they're also holding on to. So you have to be mindful as you're navigating. If someone comes to you with their own resentments, handle it. You know, I'm going to have a conversation with Martin. I'm actually going to tell Martin in the future, just have a conversation with me and stop making threats about reporting me to people. It's not cute. We're all adults. I might buy him something nice even. Okay, just so that he knows I'm not here to make Martin's reality like horrible. It's just one of those things. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm trying to be the best me. You feel like the best you is not to have me here. We're going to have to find a compromise. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things for yourself as you're navigating through the process. Find the right compromises for yourself. If you're navigating through Mercury retrograde in third house, communication class is basically saying, okay, we need to go back and rehash this, because you did okay, but you could do better. You know what I mean? You've been internalizing a lot of things. So a lot of the internalized stuff is actually going to come to manifestation as well. And this is really a great opportunity for you to be able to kind of like have those conversations. Don't shy away from them. Lean into them. Maybe not run into them, but lean into them. Okay. Because if you run into them, you might find yourself being hasty. And then because Uranus is also trying to support this change that Mercury is trying to do, it may be in the most auspicious way, and it may be so unpredictable. And you might feel very, very overwhelmed in navigating through the process of it all. But if you can just take a minute to breathe, it will actually help you. Okay. It helps to shift the physiology because it oxygenates the mind, and then it actually different spirits. What I would say to you as well, whatever spirit you feel, observe the breathing pattern of that spirit. That's how you will know when your body is now in the reflection of that spirit. So when I'm depressed, I usually am very chest heavy in my breathing, because my breathing struggles to go any deeper. Because it's almost like thinking about all the stuff, so it stays on the surface. It doesn't go any deeper because it's just looking for reasons to be able to deflect and not really observe, right? Observe how the spirits move when playing host in your avatar as an emotion, basically, because that's ultimately what it is. Energy in motion, emotion, right? So observe that, because then if you gather that, you'll be able to start figuring out, because I'm going to be getting you guys ready for a whole space that I've been preparing since 2018, but your girl's still, like I said, lazy. So I'm still optimizing that space, but I'm working in this space to prepare you guys so we can go over into that space to really brush up on homework. But like when you're navigating through all of this, try not to put anything out there, because like spirit of anger wants you to say some vicious shit right now so that you can basically like create timelines so that it can move during this season. Observe how it feels in your body and your physiology so that you know how to shift it as well, right? One of the things that I find works with the spirit of anger, because that's generally what tends to manifest when we're dealing with Mercury retrograde a lot of the times, because everything else, anger is basically a secondary emotion. So it masks a lot of the other emotions that we're actually feeling. Anger can actually mask anxiety. Anger can mask vulnerability. Anger can mask sadness. Like it's a secondary emotion. So a lot of the times, if that is our go-to like response to situations, then it's going to be one of the, hey, beautiful. If anger is our go-to emotion to reacting to situations, then it's going to be one of those situations where anger is going to try its best to feed off as many of the people within your environment as it can, right? So if you can understand what anger looks and feels like in the physiology of your body, observe it through the breathing, because usually when I do exorcisms, I actually remove the entity through the breathing process, because that's where the entity is actually able to leave the body physiologically speaking. So, you know, like how in the Bible it speaks about, sorry, I'm about to like get real religious with y'all for a second, but it speaks about how God basically, you know, breathed life into Adam. Okay, there's many layers to God. If you look in the Bible, it speaks about God being angry, jealous, like wrath of God, this God, and the shadows of God that we're navigating through that are his demons, okay? Because we have this dialogue that, you know, God is separate from all of this stuff, and we also understand that God created all of this stuff, but God is within all of the context of all of this, right? He just chose to be love. That's all, in spite of everything. But if you're navigating through spirits that are very heavy in vibration, then no, you're navigating through a demon, basically. Okay, because like spirits that are high vibrationally speaking, the breathing pattern tends to be very easy to flow basically through the channels of the chakra, as opposed to like spirits that are very dense. It's very, very hard for it to move into even the solar plexus, because it stays and sits in the heart. It struggles to process beyond the heart, basically. Okay, so just be mindful when you feel whatever you feel, whatever emotion you feel, name that emotion, because that's the spirit that is basically playing host in that moment. Make a note and journal where you can as well, so that you can understand the physiology of what's taking place. And then also, as you're kind of like navigating through the process of that, one thing that you can do to basically assist yourself in shifting is to actually articulate what it is that you're trying to say from a place of like actually being calm, rational, using your adult voice as opposed to your inner child who basically doesn't know how to articulate themselves and who's very frazzled with the entire adult world, basically, because they just want to be able to have fun, right? So that part, like, that's how you're going to be able to sort of like optimize. Once you identify what energy you are in, then you can start to be able to figure out the code, basically the hack, how to hack that spirit within your physiology, so that you can basically develop command of said spirit through your ability to kind of like breathe yourself out of that dynamic. And a lot of the times when you go through the process of the breathing, you then get to push that demon to the back of the subconscious, so it no longer has the ability to directly attach to your ego and be a part of your conscious reality, but it does stay lurking in the subconscious, and you have to observe it, because when it keeps knocking from the subconscious and you're not vocalizing some of those internalized feelings in a healthy way, then again, we're going to deal with eruptions, right? So just be mindful of utilizing this really, really like it's so sublime, this energy for you if you're navigating through third house energy with the Mercury retrograde. It's such a sublime time for you to really be able to work and focus and zoom in on any areas where you haven't necessarily been able to communicate as effectively. Any area of life where it's just not happening for you. Ideally, obviously, this is to do with your business partnerships and your sibling dynamics and your neighborhood situation. So how you deal with these types of dynamics is going to matter. So neighborhood can also mean in your community. It doesn't necessarily actually have to mean your neighbor. So it can mean like the people that you find to be closest to you. So your friendship group can easily be I guess reflected in that energy as well, depending on how you perceive them. So you can easily sit that class in those types of dynamics yet again, right? So there's a lot of entangling with the situation, you know. So try not to get into any entanglements, okay, in the words of Jada Smith. That part. Definitely try not to get into any entanglements. Like, I know I said that as shade and like a light-hearted humor, but seriously, try not to get into any entanglements, because if you do, it's going to be like the most challenging work to do. Like, this is the thing. Mercury retrograde isn't necessarily, I'm not going to say it's not bad. It's just a challenge. If you get into any sort of like situation, romantically speaking, in this kind of climate, it's just going to be very, very challenging to kind of like optimize both of you guys. You probably have a lot of the same demons that are mirroring each other. So you guys are going to have to actually learn to work at learning how to preserve your own demon in a healthier way, so that you can learn how to preserve whoever you're reflecting in that space as well. So that's another thing, but we'll go to the fourth house. So if Mercury retrograde is actually happening in your fourth house, in terms of the individual houses and in terms of the individual class, fourth house is all about the home dynamics. It's about the foundations that we kind of have, and it's particularly to sort of like to do with signifying the maternal relationship. So for those of you who are dealing with Mercury retrograde in your fourth house, you more than likely are going to be seeing maternal trauma surface for you, and this can go all the way back to at least 4 or 5 generations prior to you. For some of you, maybe up to 10 generations, to be honest with you. Depends on how much work's actually been done on the lineage. But it's, if you're navigating through Mercury retrograde, I guess in your fourth house, Mercury's actually taking you back to the foundations to let you know basically where you got sick in the first place. Mercury's taking you back to the home to give you perspective and give you an opportunity to be more perceptive on why you are the way that you are, where you got broken in the first place, where you actually learned to, mask your pain, where you learned to shine your light, where you learned to actually optimize some of your qualities by being in challenging situations, where you can see that love was poured into you, and you, as a result of that, were able to pour into others in the same way, because that was the level of love and degree of love that you had to give. You know what I mean? Like, those are some of the conversations that Mercury is going to be having with you in your individual class, if Mercury is obviously in your fourth house, right? It really is going to give you an opportunity as well to be able to mother yourself, right? It's going to give you an opportunity. And when I say mother yourself, I mean, it's kind of like all of the areas that you felt like, oh, my parents should have done this, my parents should have done that. Well, stuff it. They didn't. Oh, well. Not in a harsh way, respectfully, they didn't. That's just a reality. That's just us getting to the facts of the situation. They didn't. They did what they did, and that's what it is, right? So now, from where we are, what are we going to do moving from where we are? Now that we realize that basically we've been navigating with a fat, gaping wound around our arm that's basically along our shoulder as well. Like, what are you going to do with that? You know what I mean? Are you going to keep putting a little like bandage over it so you don't see it because you don't want to? Or are you actually going to take the opportunity to do something about the situation and actually have some challenging conversations that may not actually even be conversations that you want to have? You may very well dread these conversations, but that doesn't mean that they aren't the necessary conversations. They are the absolutely necessary conversations. And in fact, you have to have some tedious conversations to get to these types of conversations. So you might get to a place where, you're dealing with situations where you're having to face some of the mistreatment in terms of the maternal dynamic. So in sibling situations, where there's like sibling rivalry, those types of runes will start to flare up in this type of context as well, but it will be to kind of like hold the mother figure accountable in that type of dynamic. Whatever person you identify that is nurturing you like a mother, that class is going to go into a dynamic, because the universe doesn't see, like, obviously the genetics makes it a little bit easier for us to navigate through the lineage aspect of these types of archetypes, right? But if you have somebody that's playing mother to you and they are mothering you, that relationship is going to be on front street during this Mercury retrograde as well. It's being put in the spotlight basically to be purified during the Mercury retrograde. So that you can get more of an understanding as to where your codependencies lie as well. Because I think if you're dealing with fourth house energy for your Mercury retrograde, it really is about like codependency and having like an open dialogue about where there are certain levels of codependency. And what do I mean by that? So there's many levels to this. So the way that they're putting it to me, like some of the maternal figures may be dependent on you showing up a certain type of way or need to keep you small in certain types of situations so that their ego can feel prestige in the dynamic that they're navigating through, because that's the only way that they know how to be able to coexist with you. Those types of cycles, this is an opportunity for those types of cycles to be able to end. Again, we're navigating through Aries new moon, Libra full moon, Aries / Taurus new moon energy, which is a solar eclipse as well, like just wiping all of that BS out. It's just like, nope, we're not doing that. Like, this isn't necessarily for our overall best good. So we're just going to scratch that and we're going to actually like try and figure out a different POA, right? In dealing with the fourth house energy as well, what they're saying to me is like the foundations as well, where the foundations aren't necessarily strong for some of you guys, where you don't want to do any work on your foundations, you're going to be forced to. Where you've been putting off, how can I put it? Where you've been putting off doing things that you know that you have to do in order to get to where you're trying to go. Where you've been putting some of those things off, now is going to be do it. That's where God's at now with that situation. You know, it's a do it matter of urgency with those types of situations. It's like the most important things are going to be seen to accordingly first, right? So just be mindful as you're navigating. If you're dealing with Mercury in fourth house energy in your natal chart, you are likely to basically take a venture into your inner child's hard drive in a different way, because you're going back to home. You're going back to what home looked like then versus what home looks like now. How much of home then reflects and mirrors home today? Like, where is it? Is it in the energy? Is it in the behavior? Is it in the attitude? Is it in the actions? Like, where is it? Right? And wherever you feel like you need to clean up, clean it up. That's what we're here to do. Like, yes, our demons are a part of the process, but we're actually here to transmute them. Yes, they are to some degree. I guess not all of them are our friends, because some of them don't necessarily like us, just because they feel like, you know, we get a lot of leniencies, even though we don't feel that way, right? But because they don't get to get away with certain things with God. It doesn't work like that. But there's a little bit more of a leniency for us, because obviously we have free will and we can tend to be ignorant sometimes. So that plays in our favor. But when you're navigating through the process of this, just be cognitive of what your foundations could be versus what your foundations is, and how that may be a result of where your initial foundations were. And I don't mean how, like, I mean literally actually pinpointing all of the layers of it, because if you can uproot all of those belief systems, the more things that you can unearth during this Mercury retrograde, the more conscious you become of the factors of self that is basically outside of alignment of the things that you're trying to manifest. I hope that that makes sense. I know you guys got me. We're here, guys. I gave you guys some, I guess, examples in terms of it being in the fifth house, because obviously it's a creative house, the house of creative expression. I did sort of say to you guys already, I gave you guys my analogy in terms of how that's playing out for me, because I've got Mercury in my 5th house. So it's one of those things at the minute. If you guys kind of like understood the context of what I said about my experience, then you guys will kind of understand what that looks like for a person who's having Mercury retrograde in their 5th house in their natal chart, right? My creativity is being able to expand. Anybody that's having this in their 5th house, your 5th house is also, again, your 4th house will be impacted. Any other planets, any of the planetary bodies that are in your houses that Mercury is also in is going to be impacted. My romance is going to be impacted, and my ability to basically navigate my shadow side is going to come into question, because my Venus and my node is also in my 5th house. Okay, so 5th house is going to be completely shaken altogether for myself, right? See what other planetary bodies you've got in the same house as Mercury, and then you'll be able to get an understanding as well of how that may be impacting other areas of life as well, right? Because we're sitting many classes all at once. That's why, sometimes it's like, oh, give me a break here, but God's like, okay, yeah, I didn't do anything last week, like sit that class today. Okay, I gave you a break last week. You didn't come to class last week, I let you sleep in. Basically. But yeah, I hope that you guys have got a good point of reference from what I mentioned with the 5th house energy. So for those of you guys who are actually experiencing Mercury retrograde in the 6th house, this is actually a good time for you to be able to, because 6th house is all about sort of like debts, if you will, any sort of like past due, anything that's past due, basically. So that also comes with a little bit as well sometimes of employment challenges, sometimes in opposition, basically, when it comes to 6th house energy, when we're navigating through some of those types of things. So if you do have Mercury retrograde in your 6th house, I'd say it's more a case of you being able to kind of like understand you are going to get an opportunity at the minute. So some old cycles of debt is going to be written off. So old debt's going to be written off, but this is also where you have to understand how you may still have the same abilities to manifest yourself some new debts during the season. So be mindful of that. Okay, don't make any hasty decisions when it comes to situations that may be requiring a lot more thought process from yourself. Take a minute, stick a pin in it, and then come back to it another time. Do you see what I'm saying? Don't necessarily make any hasty decisions when it comes to those aspects, again, because obviously in your collective class, we've got Mercury retrograde in Taurus, right? But your individual class is that it's going to be seeing how you manage debt, right? And what you're like in terms of paying debt. And that means like also, if you've said that you're going to do something, how good are you at keeping your promises? If you have basically, how can I put it as well? If you have, paid something forward to someone, you might actually finding yourself in this season playing their debt collector, basically, because now you're in the class of debt. So debt can be on either, you might be on the receiving end of debt, or you might be on the receptivity of having a debt paid back to you as well. And it may come with its own employment challenges as well, like I said. So that may be a dynamic as you navigate through the process of this. I'm actually navigating through that, interestingly enough, in my collective class, as far as Taurus being able to stabilize. So again, we're navigating through a lot of different aspects of the energy, right? So when you're dealing with opposing energy as well, it's also usually a reflection of yourself, a piece or a part of yourself that isn't necessarily all the way in agreement with something that you're thinking or perceiving as well. So you've got to be mindful of that, right? You've got to be able to really stop and take a minute to not miss a beat when you're dealing with a situation like that. Because really, a lot of the times when my demons start to project themselves outwardly and start to move through people, and then it's like, dude, you told me that 2 days ago and I said to you, I'm working on it. Why have you decided to go out here and start having a conversation with me through somebody else? Basically, right? Why have you now decided that you're basically going to attach yourself to this person because you know that they have this wound and that makes them a viable candidate, because you know we share a lot of the same wounds with the people that we're obviously in our environment with, because we're reflecting each other, right? Where we're kind of grouping together because we're vibrating at those same frequencies. When you're dealing with situations where you're dealing with opposition, it's usually some sort of internal dialogue that you're actually having that isn't necessarily being had consciously, basically. Because sometimes my demons want some time with me, but I keep putting them in time out. I'm like, I don't have time. I've got this to do. I've got that to do. I've got this to do. So sometimes they're just like, look, I'm shutting the body down because I can't get any of your attention. You keep giving all of your more positive emotions, opportunity to be heard and seen and expressed and articulated. And I'm just here. I'm frustrated with this situation. I told you this 2 weeks ago. Can we sort this out, please? So those types of dynamics, when you're dealing with opposition, it's actually more, like I said, of an internal dialogue that is actually being projected externally, because it is mirroring itself coming back to you, so that you can actually resolve it, because you're not resolving it internally, and there's already dialogue subconsciously that's actually sort of going through your different intuitive channels to kind of like emit frequency, so that you can sense that voice that is trying to do something, so that it can direct you to the healing, right? And when you're not listening consciously, they'll do what they need to do because they're just trying to help themselves at the end of the day. They're trying to heal themselves, really. Right. So they utilize us for that aspect as well, to be able to actually optimize, to actually be able to heal. Not all of them actually want to go out, go into the light, I guess, as far as like being optimized, but some do. So when you do find yourself navigating through certain challenges, you have to identify, okay, let me give you an example, because they're saying to me, give an example. Okay, God said go to this new job, and then I met the challenge of, okay, nobody over in my old job is actually able to do what I've done just yet, because I was just in the process of optimizing it, and I'm the only person who knows to execute that. So God said go back. Okay, so I had to navigate the challenge of that, which means that I have a lot less time for self, but a lot more time to actually be able to give to what the other self wanted, because the other self wanted to be able to, she's navigating through, again, Taurus retrograde, Mercury retrograde in Taurus. She's navigating through her ability to be able to save, her ability to be able to manifest material possessions, her ability to actually be able to stabilize in her skills enough to be able to kind of, ground her reality where it's not like shaky. So that would be an example basically for you guys, just to sort of like put it into context, right? So if you are experiencing Mercury retrograde in your 6th house, do just look out for any opposition, because really it's not just an enemy, it's also an inner me. Okay, so it's an inner you projecting so that it can be seen. It's just a reflection. And the 7th house energy now. So if you are navigating through the Mercury retrograde, well, your Mercury is in your 7th house. This one's going to be, again, make sure that you guys check whatever. Yes, beautiful. Check whatever. Yeah, because enough times my demons are like out here, like manifesting through people, and I can actually see that it's my frequency. Like my anxiety demons are worse, because it will like project certain thoughts into my mind, to kind of like let me know, because like its fear receptor starts to go off, and then it will manifest from that place of fear, and then start moving me into manifesting from the law of repulsion instead. So we just have to kind of like be mindful, because I've seen so many of my demons out here. I'm like, get back in. I'll deal with you tomorrow. We'll actually have a conversation tomorrow. I promise. And I actually do have to have a conversation tomorrow, and then like it pleads its case to me consciously. I then figure out a way to be able to nurture that. I then also, if somebody else is involved, I then also have to figure out a way to be able to, delegate and speak to that person, so that I can communicate my demons' qualms, basically, so that we can move forward. So it's one of those types of situations. If you're dealing with sixth house energy, just be cognitive of what you're actually experiencing, because there's a lot of debts as well. Remember, if you are treating somebody illy during this time, so if you see a person who's sick, basically, they're basically either sick with somebody else's demons or their own demons are flaring up. If you treat them with disdain and distaste, that's liable to come back to you. So just be mindful of that, because they're saying that one to me, because people have a tendency my grandma is saying, okay, people have a tendency here to be like, oh, I would never do that, and I don't know how that person could find it in their hearts to do that. And literally the angels there, like, looking at the moment where they actually are that, like, literally it's facts. So just be mindful, okay? Don't subconsciously or consciously manifest anything for yourself that you're not intending to actually receive later on. That part, because there's so much. Seventh house energy though, so this one is tricky. And also, I'm going to say this as well, like, if you're dealing with somebody, you know, because my partner's Gemini, so Mercury retrograde is usually generally quite intense for us. Anywho, because it's just one of those things where how can I put it? Mercury sort of like rules as far as Gemini. There's something going on out there. I don't know. Sorry, I think I can hear cats. I think I can hear the cats out there, and they are going for it. They are going for it, guys. Sorry, my bad, y'all. But yeah. If you're dealing with it in seventh house, just it's going to impact mostly your partnerships, because that's what the seventh house energy is sort of like, really sort of like reflecting. Mostly it's business, friendships, and romance class. So if you do have Mercury retrograde in your seventh house, again, check as well what other houses you have, what other planetary bodies you have in your seventh house, because that whole house is going to be shaken up according to the energy of those planetary bodies. Like for me, it's my Venus, so my creativity is going to be impacted, and that's going to take a big shift again, and also romance, and also my ability to be able to generate self-love, basically, because Venus also is responsible for that as well. And with my node powered up, with my node being able to kind of like take me to the dark side, take me into the depth, I guess, of my complexities. That's how you'll be able to think. So go and check and see what other planetary bodies are in the same house as your Mercury, and just know that those are also going to be impacted, because that house is being impacted anywho. Okay. So when you're dealing with it in partnerships, so a lot of the times what will happen in this type of dynamic is that the spirit of manipulation will move through the space, definitely. A lot of gaslighting, so you can expect some of those types of dynamic if you're dealing with it in seventh house energy. You can also expect, how can I put it? What spirit usually sort of comes up, guys? How can I put it? I know Leviathan, but those are like, how can I put out his qualities? So Leviathan is like one of the bigger demons in the underworld as well. Like he's one of those like king demons, because he's got a few emotions basically that he can shapeshift into. But let me have a think. Oh, okay. Spirit of confusion as well. Okay, I already put that across to you guys about the spirit of confusion being out here, but they're saying like seventh house energy in particular, you guys will be able to kind of like really feel the impact of the spirit of confusion as well, because basically this Mercury as well is also asking you to obviously deliver as your authentic self, as always, you know what I mean? As your authentic self, authentic representation, authentic communication is the, I guess, assignment, right? And with the kind of dynamics that we're navigating through, with it being in Taurus, like Mercury wants us to be able to stabilize. So anything that is going on in our business partnerships, romantic relationships, or our friendships, where you know, people are being manipulative because they're kind of they've got their own agenda and they're trying to confuse you as a result. Love bombing, then gaslighting, love bombing, then gaslighting. No, I didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. All of that type of stuff. Some of those stories are going to be playing out. If you do hear those stories from anyone around you, let me know, because we're going to be catching up on class next week as well, when we're actually fully in the energy of the Mercury retrograde. Because at the minute, we actually have the Aries / Taurus new moon, because I think obviously Taurus, actually the moon goes into Taurus. Let's see what time the moon goes into Taurus as well, just so that we can see the numerology there and see what God is doing to activate us as well on that plane. Oh, 412, nice timing. Nice timing. Okay, so the new moon eclipse happens at 4:12 for us in the UK. Obviously, it's different for you guys elsewhere, but we're on GMT time, so Greenwich Mean Time. That happens at 4:12. So 4 is the number of the archangels bringing new beginnings into manifestation, which is what 1 represents, new beginning, and 2 represents life purpose, the balance and duality. So reading the numerology on that, you know, this new moon that we've got sort of, I guess, in Aries, because it goes into Taurus around about 4:30. So roughly around about 18 minutes later, after the eclipse takes place, then it goes into Taurus, basically. So it ends everything that is going to actually like not be able to come along with you. All of that baggage is like, it's kind of like wrapping it up nicely and being like, I'm done. The sun and the moon, I mean Friday. Oh, I don't know. I don't think I got the full context of it, Shaylee, in terms of what you were sort of saying there, but we've got that going for us tomorrow, right? And that's activating different aspects, because I want to speak to you guys about this as far as like tomorrow with this solar eclipse. So this is going to be activating, because I'm seeing so many people. I've seen like family members that's being activated in this place. Myself, obviously, I'm being activated, but it looks differently for me. So the aspects of the body that's actually being impacted is the neck, the vocal cords, the throat, and the thyroid gland, just to sort of like name a few, as far as like the aspects of the body that's actually going to be activated. Okay, she's saying the sun and moon's actually sort of like going into Taurus on Friday. I think for us on Thursday, the moon goes into Taurus for us here in the UK, but I don't know what time it sort of like happens for you guys as well. But the sun and the moon for us, it happens on Thursday. But like, see what I just said there? Obviously, the throat chakra, basically, in essence, is being like activated, right? And with the activation of that, it might look different for everybody, okay? Because some people, you know, if they have low self-esteem, it might actually manifest as something completely different as well. I myself am going to I guess because I'm out here and I'm speaking, you guys are seeing how my throat chakra is being activated, basically. This is you guys basically being able to see my activation live in action as it's taking place. Just to put it into context for you guys, just so that you guys get what I'm saying, right? You're also going to have situations as well for yourself where you're going to be asked to speak up about certain things, where you're going to be called to speak up about certain things as well. So I'd say as you're navigating through the energies, even tomorrow, it's again setting you up for what's to come with the Mercury retrograde following, because that's happening on the 21st as well, right? So just be mindful, because we've got like a sensitive time during the next few weeks, and our words are very powerful as well. So now that I'm being activated in throat chakra, I have to be very mindful. I can't be speaking negatively over anything, because that's going to create some negative timelines a little bit further down the line as well, when Mercury's actually finished with retrograde, depending on how harshly, I've spoken things into manifestation. So be mindful as well. Same thing applies to you. We're all collectively actually being activated by our throat chakra. So whilst the moon is actually moving through, and I'm going to be doing different segments on the different like moon transits and when it's activating different aspects of the body and what chakras are being activated and what to do and what not to do, so that we can kind of like start to optimize in those classes as well. As they're sort of like coming, because we get those classes daily, whereas like the Mercury retrogrades of it all, those happen like, you know, seasonally. So yeah, don't worry, I got you guys on that. I'm still just optimizing. Just let your girl get her stuff together. I told y'all earlier, now there's 2 jobs and a whole business, so give me some time. Okay. 7th house, that's what we were speaking about. But with the partnerships, right, you may find that partnerships are depleted and they come back really quickly, or you might find that there are partnerships at the minute that are gone completely during this season, or you may find that there's partnerships that have been gone for a while that are actually trying to make their way back in, even if it's on a subconscious level where you're now starting to have thoughts about it and it's going on at a subconscious level, because technically it's actually still in your hard drive and it may manifest later on a future timeline, right? Depending on how much work you're doing and what you're actually like, where you're at basically in terms of your classes. Moving into 8th house, right? So if you have the Mercury retrograde happening in your 8th house, there's a big sort of like shift that happens for you during this transit, right? Because with the Mercury retrograde in the 8th house, it's all about sort of like transformation. So your transformation, it's almost like people are going to be looking at you all of a sudden and be like, oh my God, I didn't know that you could do this, or I didn't know that you can speak like that, or I didn't know that you were actually able to speak up for me that way. I didn't know that you were actually, oh snap. The eclipse is in my 8th. I think as well, like, this is an opportunity for it to be like a death and a rebirth. And Shaylee, don't worry, pros and cons, because we already had discussions and I'm still supposed to come back to you. But if it's happening in your 8th house, with what I've just said, I fully grasp it and I get it now as well. Death and rebirth. So old self dies out when you're dealing with 8th house energy, rebirth dynamics. So you start to set the scope, basically. You start to set the precedent for the new standards of life moving forward. And it's more to do with the subconscious reality versus the actual conscious mind. So versus the actual physical reality that we're experiencing here. When we're dealing with 8th house energy, it really is about transforming at a deeper layer of self. So at the subtle realms of self. So that can be genetically speaking. That can also be like mentally on a certain level. Even when we're optimizing, like on a mental level, we definitely shift like degrees of perspective, like vibrationally speaking as well. A lot of the times you guys might feel like shivering, you know, like when you guys feel the shiver go up your spine and stuff. Like a lot of the time spirits are moving through the space in those types of you know, environments. But also some of the times it really is like genetic activation that's taking place. And now your hairs are standing up because they're your antennas. So now they're tuning into the new channels of your genetic activation, basically. So that's why you would feel your body kind of like go into this, you know, it's literally being optimized. You literally just felt the shift in your vibration happen in those moments, but it's not being cognitive because we don't have these dialogues constantly, openly, like, oh, I just got an update. Because I do. Snap. I was like, oh, that was a nice update. Sorry. But we're going to get into a process of actually being able to have these conversations very openly, right? Now, moving into 9th house energy. This was supposed to be so quick, guys, but you know your girl, I can't help but talk. Moving into 9th house energy. If it is happening in your 9th house for you, obviously your philosophies are going to be like really, really challenged during this process for you. You're going to have to stabilize. So some of your dreamy tendencies, some of your tendencies to basically be delusional, some of your tendencies to basically be irrational, some of your tendencies to basically like be completely disregarding of consequences, those things are going to come into question during a transit like this, and you'll actually really discover who you are beyond those types of belief systems as well, because Mercury is actually again going to be helping you to kind of like shift your philosophies, because your philosophies dictates and governs your physiology. Like, let's make that very clear. Philosophy class actually activates physiology, and then we move through PE, physical education. Okay, so what I would say, if you're navigating through ninth house energy with the Mercury retrograde, where Mercury is actually in your natal chart in the ninth house, it really is a case of you checking as well what other planets, like I said before, what other planetary bodies are actually there, kind of in the same house as your Mercury as well, because those other aspects are also going to be shaken up, because that house is basically kind of like being shaken up. It's not going to look the same. It's like when you go and you change your furniture out and you kind of like shift up the dynamics of the room. It's the same sort of like effect. So if there's something, if Mercury is being shifted in that room of the house, so is everything else going to need to find a new place, basically. Right? It's actually also where your Mercury is, because where your Mercury actually is going to dictate where the houses are actually going to, how can I put it? Oh, sorry. Bear with me. I'm going to come back to you. Hobbies on the other line. 2 secs. There we go, beautiful people. Sorry about that. I haven't spoken to the hubby all day because the day's just been so hectic, because I'm like trying to optimize, which means I also have no time for romance class again. And this is what I was speaking about earlier as well. This aspect of it as well. And this is why I said to you earlier about understanding where Mercury also is as well, because Mercury is predominantly the planet that's actually going to be moving, the house that it's going to be moving into. All of those things are also going to be a factor with the situation as well. But what also actually, that's our collective class is already, everything is okay. Everything. Oh, thank you. I'm so hot. I actually had my heater on and I'm burning. I don't know if you guys can see my veins as I'm channeling as well. But I'm so hot because I've got the heater on. I don't know, you guys have seen me stripped down like since I've sat here because I'm hot. I usually have the heater on like constantly all the time because listen, I'm a tropical island babe, so I need to be warm. I can't take the cold. But no, with what I'm so hot. I actually feel like I want to pat my hair up, but I would need some assistance because I yeah. You guys see what I'm working with back there. But yes, with the Mercury energy, this dynamic, and this is why I said to you guys that I was going to come into the space and give you guys a read intuitively with the situation. Yes, in the collective case of the situation, we're obviously going to be sitting it in Taurus, right? With Mercury for me being in my 5th house, and the other, I've got Venus and my node in my 5th house as well. Those things are all being shaken up at the minute. I'm seeing the same thing with a lot of other people as well, as far as like observing what's going on in their chart, as far as where Mercury is in terms of their individual chart. I'm seeing like a lot of people with the throat activation, tonsillitis is becoming a factor in situations where the spirit of low self-esteem basically is feeding at this point. Just loads of different factors, which is why I'm kind of like giving it to you guys the way that I am as well, right? And then Taurus is in the 8th or 9th. Oh God, I have Mercury in my 7th or 8th, depending on the house system used. Okay. Damn, girl, 7th or 8th. Hey. Sorry. I was feeling like really, really like perturbed about the fact that you know, Mercury is actually moving through my like it would be sort of like happening in my 5th house with the retrograde and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I don't know how I am going to be able to kind of like sit into this space and still be able to optimize, because it's going to require so much of me. So I'm having to do the most in optimizing at the minute. Because you see, like, relationship, I haven't spoken to my partner like most of the day today. It's after 11. This is the first time he's been able to contact me. I don't want it. I know. It's well, it's a lot. It's big, Chaley. It's big. I think the 8th house thing and the 7th house thing I actually get, because like either of those would be like pretty intense to kind of like navigate. So I get it as well. 9th house as well. You guys will actually find yourselves, like, if it's navigating through your 9th house as well, there's definitely some astral projection during that type of dynamic as well, when we're dealing with our philosophies. Like, a lot of our time or consciousness leaves our body and we sort of like go into other realms to be able to kind of like process the belief system as we're kind of like updating it as well. So you may find that you're not actually present in your body that often if you're dealing with 9th house energy as well. So that's something to kind of like just keep into mind. I don't know, usually when I'm kind of like navigating through certain things where my 9th house energy is kind of like being disturbed with situations, I usually kind of like tell people, by the way, I'm going to put a do not disturb on, because I'm not really going to be here much. Plus I'm Pisces, okay, so I'm naturally dreamy. I can't help but be, okay. So it's one of those things that I would say, if you are navigating through 9th house sort of like transit with this, I would say definitely kind of like allow yourself the room to not be, I'm not going to say not be too present in your body. It's just going to be the natural part of the process. You're going to be like this a lot of the times, right? Because there's going to be different forces that may basically utilize. They might come in and out of your body, move in and out through your body, basically, to be able to assist you in shifting your philosophies on certain things, basically. And it can take a lot of processing a lot of the times when it's those types of dynamics. So I would say when you're dealing with your philosophical updates and stuff like that, just be gentle with yourself. Nothing is set in stone. Every belief system has room and capacity to be expanded upon. Everything has the opportunity to be, sorry, I think Martin just knocked at my wall. I'm not on the phone. I'm doing my live. I'm doing my creative stuff like we spoke about. But that's really not my issue. We're gonna have to find some sort of common ground, because I'm trying to optimize, and I've been respectful for long enough in being, you know, lazy. I've optimized my lazy personality, so we're going to have to figure that out. I did say to you guys, if I do sort of get low, let me know, and then I'll kind of like bring the decibels back up, because I figured he'd probably start to moan around about this time, because I can sense that his demon's getting like highly irritated. Basically, the more I'm actually optimizing in this space, the more that demon's actually getting irritated, because it's actually a demon manifesting through him that is actually one of my demons, basically, that is trying to cause resistance to my optimizing process. But again, these are some of the things that we can look out for during the Mercury retrograde. Yay! So 10th house. Let's get into it. I can't. I'm telling you, Jaylee. I'm just like, damn, I cannot. I just can't. 10th house energy, I guess that's a little bit different when we're dealing with 10th house energy. Let me because I'm getting dry. When we're dealing with the 10th house energy, it's a little bit more of us being able to kind of like definitively step into purpose. It's like you're doing everything on purpose. You might not know like that it's God's purpose as opposed to your purpose, but you will find yourself, it's all about social status. So God is basically trying to set you up for where he sees you, ideally, hoping that you will use your free will. And that's what the retrogrades are there for. It's actually to give us an opportunity to do God a favor. And when I say a favor, like I said, because God is working to put everything in our favor, but he has to consider all of his children, basically. Can you imagine having like 7-8 billion kids? Like, that's a lot. Nick Cannon can't even like manage the little that he's got. So imagine 8-9 billion. Like, that's a lot. So like with that type of dynamic, it's like God's obviously trying to position you into a certain place and put you into a certain group within the social status of things. But you may be sort of like having your own focus on one particular thing, and then that causes resistance, and it's a bit tricky. I will post the timestamps for this so you don't have to worry about, oh, thank you, Chaley. I appreciate you. I'm literally thinking to myself, this is going to be quite the transit for us. I'm telling you guys, it's going to be so intense. For those of you guys who are going to be having this in like 10th house, I'm going to say like this one is going to be really, really good for you guys because Mercury's already happening in Taurus, right? And that's definitely going to give you an opportunity to be able to kind of like stabilize. But with the aspect of your individual class actually taking place in your 10th house, right? Because this is to like what your individual class is for this Mercury retrograde. With it happening in your 10th house, it's definitely going to kind of like give you an opportunity to basically do things that you were doing before, but you stopped doing, or you deterred yourself away from it, or you kind of basically there was too much resistance. You met too many of your demons along the way, and you may have been perturbed because you were looking at them thinking that there were other people's demons and that type of, because I feel like knowing that it's my demon actually manifesting through Martin, it makes me feel a little bit better to be like, oh, it's fine, like I get it, you know. You're just kind of like trying to be resistant because my lazy personality wants to manifest, and he's trying to get his lazy personality basically because he's still on that vibration of like his piece looks like basically being lazy for my personality type as far as what I want to do. So that's why it's manifesting through him, because I've now shedded that layer of my lazy personality, but his is now like flaring up because again my demon's using him to basically come at me to stop me so that she can go back to being lazy. But girl, we're going to have a conversation. I've got some time for you in the schedule on Sunday. I'm pretty busy throughout the week, but I'm going to make some time, 20 minutes for you on Sunday. We can have a discussion about your problems, that part, right? No, Martin is my neighbor, Chaley. Earlier on, I was like letting the guys know about like my 5th house dynamic and how like with my creativity being activated and me being out here, Martin, my neighbor, is now like going around telling my other neighbors that I'm on the phone till all hours of night and he's thinking about reporting me. For what? What are they going to do? Turn your phone down. Turn your phone down. I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, his actual problem is the fact that he has thin walls. Like we have thin walls. I can't even say he, because this is my problem too, but I don't mind. You know what I mean? I try my best to keep my noise down as much as I can, but I couldn't be lazy anymore. But this is really my lazy personality, just trying to get me back into like laziness with Martin. We ain't gonna do it. I got stuff to do. So that's the story about Martin. My other neighbor downstairs actually pops a letter through my letterbox yesterday, and I picked it up this morning on my way out. And Martin's been knocking on my wall since I've actually been on this live. I don't know who he thinks he's going to report me to, because I'm not playing loud music. I'm not being a nuisance. This is him problem situation. Do you understand? So it's just one of those things. I think he's elderly. And I did also say, I think that this is also, since I've actually moved here, I think there might be other undertones to the situation. I was trying to explain to everybody else as well. I think there's a perception of me because of my parents, if you know what I mean. And I guess that is really what he's battling against, because I can see beneath the tone of what we're actually navigating through at the minute, there's another layer to it, basically, and it's not as clear as he's pretending like it is, to be fair. Not even to himself. He knows deep down really why he doesn't like me. Yeah, you're just talking and not even loudly tell him to get some earplugs, right? Exactly that. Mind you, obviously, I do understand that I do have a high decibel, and sometimes I'm like very animated, so I get like loud. And I do know that I've been on like my lives till like hours of the morning, so I do get that it can be a little bit frustrating. But come and have a like knock and say to me, do you know what? I didn't actually appreciate that last night. Instead of sitting there and like letting the demon fester, because now my demon's going to come and move through you. Because you're carrying those feelings of resentment towards me. So it feels like he can easily use you against me. Like, that's not fair. Where's the love there? I feel like Black Eyed Peas. Where is the love? Sorry, I'm like hearing the theme tune in my in my head. But yeah, it's more of a Martin problem, to be honest. It is a Shakima problem as well, but it's actually really more of a Martin problem. I'm going to utilize this time and optimize my lazy personality and then have a conversation with him, because then I can completely dispel that demon. And hopefully we can come to a mutual understanding, and he can dispel his resentment towards me as well and actually get to know me, because I think at the minute he has a perception of who he thinks I am. So yeah, with the 10th house energy, I think the way that God is going to really be able to utilize this Mercury retrograde to basically call you back into submission of some of the projects that you've basically said, oh, I don't think I was ready to do that. Oh, I don't think I'm looking to do that. Oh, I don't think I have the capacity to do that. God's going to be calling you back into some of those areas and really giving you an opportunity to kind of like review that. Are you sure? Are you sure? Because really, I see that in like when you said no last time, you've actually, since that time has passed, you've optimized in this skill set, this skill set, this skill set, this skill set. So you can actually do this. I want to put you on. You ready? There you go. Go for it. Right. So as you're navigating through your individual class, if you're dealing with it in sort of like 10th house energy, then I would definitely sort of like recommend that you take heed of what God is trying to tell you about like the value that he sees in you. Because I'm telling you, so many times when I was dealing with like 10th house stuff, God took me through feelings of worthlessness that I didn't even realize how deep it went within me, basically. And I was just so grateful to actually like survive the surgery of that spirit of worthlessness, because it went so deep within me, firstly. But then to be able to like really go further and deeper into contracts with the spirit of confidence was really like beneficial. So that's what happens a lot of the times when you're navigating through purpose as well, right? A lot of the times, you know, we don't necessarily feel worthy, and God has to bleed the self-worth out of us, the lack of self-worth, sorry, out of us, so that he can pour in the confidence into us, right? So that we can see the value within ourselves based on how he sees us and what his intentions are for us and what he wants for our lives, right? So if we're dealing with like 11th house energy as well, what I'd say, you know, that's all about like debut into society and the way that you actually sort of like show up, right? How do you sort of like show up in your friendship spaces with your colleagues? How do they see you? What sort of perception do they have of you? What sort of perception do you have of yourself in that kind of environment? How big or small do you play in that type of environment? Are you being your authentic representative all the time, or are you giving the representative that is going to be best suited for the people that are present for that moment that you're sharing, basically? Like, some of those questions are really, really like intrinsically hemmed in when we're dealing with like 11th house transits with any of the astral bodies, to be fair. So we really have to kind of like take our time to understand as well, like what traumas we actually have in friendships as well, because I know I've got a shit ton of trauma that I'm navigating through as far as like friendship stuff as well, and where those things actually lie, basically, where they lie within us, as far as like, you know, are we still carrying a lot of stuff in here? Are we still sort of like giving those things opportunities to sort of like live rent free in here? Are we still living in the past with certain situations? You know, just a lot of stuff. When we're dealing with 11th house energy, it can be quite, how can I put it? Sometimes it can start with depression first. It can start with the spirit of depression first, because your old self has to die, and you have to go through the incubating process. And we know that the depression is really just when spirit is incubating to move into its next ascension point. So yeah, I think when you find yourself in those types of situations where you're kind of like going through your incubating stage, and you're basically just being like preserved so that you can grow as much as you can in a safe environment, because that's what depression is. Depression is like, oh, I'm going to sit here all day and just kind of like sit with myself, right? That's a safe environment, right? To just be able to sit within itself. But when you're kind of like navigating through all of this stuff, what I'd say with the debut into society, be mindful, like especially in a Mercury retrograde sort of like dynamic, you might find that friends are talking about you behind your back. You might be learning about the things that friends are saying about you behind your back, just so that you can face that dynamic, basically. You might even learn about how friends are mistreating you behind your back, and sometimes to your face as well. And Mercury's going to be asking you, what you gonna do about that? What you gonna do? Huh? Huh? Basically, that part. So it's one of those types of situations where, and again, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be aggressive. Don't let Mars energy start talking to you at that point, right? Maybe balance it out a little bit before you actually even go into the space. Maybe have a conversation with Pluto first, because Pluto is going to like put things into perspective, like real deep for you, before you actually even, you know, act on things, if that's the case. But you feel me, guys. 12th house energy, sort of like closing out the space, because I'm trying to like wrap up now that my Mr. called. I'm not gonna lie, because I'm like trying to get into the space before I like miss him, before he goes off to sleep. It's after midnight as well. And now I'm conscious of Martin, because obviously he's put it out there and he's like manifesting. I'll tell you this, right? I'm about to be manifesting into a completely different sort of like reality. So Martin sort of like, you know, coming at me at the minute, that's just the start of like the process of what I need to start uprooting me, basically, from where I'm at right now. And this process might play out for like a good over a year or two. It's already been playing out since I moved in, so trust me. But yeah. Because I'm trying to optimize, Shaylee. I'm trying to like juggle everything, and that class I'm not doing so good at, like hubby area. I'm still sort of like not enough time in the day just yet for that. But I'm gonna figure it out, because I've literally been up since like 5 this morning. It's after midnight. And I'm literally running on 3 hours sleep as well. If you are dealing with 12th house energy, right? If Mercury's going retrograde, sort of like in your 12th house, your individual class, what you're dealing with there is all of, thank you, beautiful. I'm just wanting to get everything done. Again, I told you, man, Virgo rising. I keep telling my mom as well. I'm like, oh, it's my Virgo rising. But I really have like a very high standard, unfortunately, being a Virgo rising. I have a very high standard. Like literally my Virgo rising, I guess, identification of self was like, I was downloading into that space earlier today, and it was like, yeah, you know, some people's standards, I mean, that's okay for them. Like I'm not really into mediocrity. She was like, so, you know, but her standards are a little bit skewed as well, because I'm like, girl, I'm a whole human, okay? A whole human. I come with limitations. Read the manual. But 12th house energy, right? It's all to do with sort of like subconscious and what's going on here. Like, where is the energy of your crown? And all of the stuff that your crown has to process is everything that's going through your root chakra all the way up. And then it has to be able to transmit uploads back, well, downloads to the body. it emits the uploads basically and puts stuff out there as far as like certain thoughts and actions and all of that kind of stuff, and then you receive your downloads, I guess, and you have to be mindful about, you know, how you're being communicated to in your dreams, what subconsciously you're actually receiving as far as like dream assignments. I get lots of dream assignments. My guides love to have like talks with me in the dream realm. I do a lot of dream analysis as well. That's something that I'm working on for you guys as well, actually. A dream journal, so that we can actually sort of like keep an electronic journal to really understand as well, like when we're being guided to do certain things. But yeah, dealing with the unseen realms as well. A lot of the times what will happen when you're dealing with the subconscious is just like I've said to you, like if you don't know what seeds are actually planting in your subconscious mind, you can let certain forces come through just out of curiosity. So if you're dealing with Mercury retrograde in 12th house, your curious tendencies may be the thing to observe in this type of climate, right? Because what happens a lot of the times is a lot of the things that you're curious about, you never know how it's going to pan out, right? But it may come with very grave prices, right? My curiosity a lot of the times gets me into so many situations, and I have to be mindful. A lot of the times it's when I guess the moon is actually in Pisces. Sorry, it's in Aquarius, but it's again a little bit of a tricky one for me because again, I'm Aquarius Pisces cusp. But the situation when you're navigating through the subconscious, it really is opportunity for you to be observant and cognitive of like the subtle realms of yourself as well as others. Like observe the shift. You can tell so much about a person behind their eyes. You can tell so much about a person's feeling based on their eyebrows. You can tell so much about where a person's at emotionally speaking based on the way that their nostrils are flaring or not. And you can tell so much about. So when we're speaking about the subtle consciousness, this is where we're all interconnected as well. When we're talking about the subconscious, it's the sum consciousness, okay? The sum of consciousness. It is the collective consciousness interconnected with each other, hence co-netted, okay? We are netting the interweaving of collective, just like we have the internet, we have the collective net. Okay. And that's obviously each and every single one of us is emitting different frequencies, just kind of sharing and lending and giving and borrowing accordingly with each other. So I'd say definitely keep a some sort of records of what's going on with our, yes, beautiful. Definitely keep some sort of records of what's going on in terms of your dreams, because your guides will basically communicate to you. A lot of the times I have certain concerns, your dreams. So when I do dream analysis, just to sort of like give you guys a tool that you can utilize as well, if you are dealing with 12th house energy or not, and you actually just want to be able to kind of like, engage with your guides and stuff like that. One of the ways that I started at first being able to kind of like communicate with my guides is in dream state. So you set an intention about something you want to get clarity on, you go to sleep, they'll have that conversation with you. You tell them before you leave the conversation, but you have to go in there. Okay, so you have to allow for yourself to drift into stage 2 sleep, because if you drift into stage 3 sleep, you won't come back with the download. You will be too far in spirit to be able to carry all of that information back into physical reality. Try and get your body into a stage 2 sleep. Stage 2 sleep is where you're conscious of being here and there at the same time. Stage 1 is when you're actually not sleeping, but your eyes are actually really closed, and that it's giving the illusion that you're actually sort of like sleeping, but it's a light state of sleep, such a light state of sleep that it's not actually processing, your body's not processing at the level that it needs to overnight to be able to optimize when you're in stage 1. So a lot of the times people complain about basically like being tired the next day after sleeping all night, even though they really weren't actually sleeping. They were basically just kind of like distracting themselves from their problems because they were technically in stage 1, just observing all the shit that they have to do the next day, basically. So they spent all their time planning their next day, basically, or focusing on their problems, pretty much. So then they have to wake up, and now you're exhausted, pretty much. So what I would say as well, just to put that one out there. So when you kind of like set your intention, when you get into stage 2, you are there, right? You're sleeping enough and you are here as well. It's easier to actually get the downloads back. So it requires lucid dreaming, basically. Lucid dreaming is stage 2. And you go into that realm where you can actually bring the files back. So you make a note of all the things that you actually want to ask questions on. And obviously, if it's a lot of stuff, I usually go by 1 or 2 questions at a time. And then if I have more stuff on my heart, by the time I get there and they like meet me in the meeting place, I usually start, okay, so what do I do about this? If this happens, then, okay, well, all right, I can do that. Well, what do I do if this situation occurs as a result of me being able to do that? And that person responds to the situation like that. Like, it's a whole plan. I go there so many times to have conversations with my guides, and then I come back and I'm like, okay, they said I need to do this. So a way that you can start getting used to bringing your assignments back and your downloads back is first thing in the morning, you check in with yourself. You ask yourself, okay, what are my assignments for the day? And you sit and you write those down firstly. So you kind of like make your to-do list, if you will. And as you kind of like start to execute those, the guides will start to be able to kind of like come forward more and more and more and more and more to be able to start communicating just in general. When you do the dream analysis now, then you'll be able to go in, meet them at the meeting point. So when I'm going to bed, I'm like, right, guys, I need you guys, I've got these questions. I need you guys to kind of like meet me at the meeting point and let's discuss what we're going to be doing, because I need a full-on plan. This isn't something that I can like download from Clairaudient and Voyant. Like, I've got questions and I need you to answer my questions. We need to have a conversation. So I need to leave my body and I need to meet you. I need to meet you in the meeting point. And once you actually sort of like, allow for your consciousness to kind of like move into that space, I usually just, whatever was on my heart, basically, I'll have the conversation. And then I usually, I'll say to them, remind me of this. Make sure that I remember when I'm coming back, please, because I need this information to be able to make sure that I optimize. I ask them. Sometimes they'll let me know, okay, you won't get everything, but you'll get what you need to know to remember what else you need to know. You know what I mean? Basically, because sometimes I don't come back with everything, because sometimes when you go deeper into consciousness, it's a little bit of a walk when you get back into the body, right? So by the time you get back into the body, a lot of that information hasn't been retained. Your secretary is just dropping information all over the sides of your hands, like you're trying to hold all the information and bring it back. You're like, oh, gotta get back to my body. Gotta get back to my body. And then you're just dropping information all over the place. So in those instances where it's a long walk, like a 10 of wands type situation, back to the castle, you'll be able to find like the little pieces that you've dropped along the way as you kind of like, utilize the little piece that you managed to come back with. You'll find the little pieces that you drop along the way as you kind of like go and life plays out. We experience those as actually deja vu, because usually our guides will take us into those timelines, show us, we'll have like the whole class plan of that situation. We'll actually get the assignment for the situation. And then obviously as we're carrying everything back, we come back with nothing because we've actually, unfortunately, we've lost it all on the way back to the body. But the good news is it's all in the body. We just have to go on the journey, get triggered enough to be able to say, oh, Eureka. It's just so funny. I think it's such an asinine sort of like process, but I guess it works. And another thing that they said as well, as far as like this Mercury retrograde, enjoy. Like, being human, we get certain like leniencies and we have certain liberties that we get the opportunity to take they don't really get some of those things. Like for us, like it's one of those things like God thinks and they are. God doesn't, and when I say God, God's experiencing on many different planes of existence, right? The single fractal of God that also exists within us. If we don't think about them, they don't exist. That's their reality. If you don't think about me, if you don't see me during the week, I still exist. You just don't see me. You know, if we don't think about them, they are non-existent in reality that we're experiencing here. So I'd say when you are dealing with the 12th house energy, dream analysis is always useful because you'll be able to kind of like bring back information and retain information from the subconscious and move accordingly to what you're able to find. Okay. Oh, guys, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to kind of like properly, next week. I forgot to obviously send out the memo this morning because I was doing a million and one things and I actually had to drive to the office today. I'm doing that again tomorrow. So I'm back into the space with you guys on Friday, and we are going to we're going to be able to do our readings on Friday, and then I'm going to be optimizing basically a process because I'm going to be on all the social media platforms like I used to be before when I was optimized as that girl, as opposed to corporate Shakima at the minute. So I just wanted to sort of like put all of that stuff out there for you guys. Thank you guys. Because I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it into the space. I wasn't sure if you guys were going to show up. But Spirit said, you know what, go in there and just start putting the stuff out there because they need to know the information as far as like the assignments that we've got coming up for this season anyway. So whenever you guys actually are able to see this, that's when you're supposed to see it. You know what I mean? So it just kind of is what it is. But thank you guys. I hope I didn't talk you guys' ears off. Like I literally just spoke for like 2 hours. This is why people like, I have to apologize to people when I send voice notes. That part, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I can't help myself. I just sat with the channel and then another channel came and another channel and another channel. I'm sorry. I appreciate you guys so much. I'm going to get better. This setup is supposed to be for us to be able to really have like dialogue back and forth as well. So when I do this again next week, I'm going to be wanting to talk about, I believe, this solar eclipse and how it's actually changing your life so far. Exciting stuff. So we'll talk about that. Well, I'm never really too sure because I'm like, oh my God, like I've gone on for so long. But next week, when I come into this space, that's going to be a conversation. There isn't even much for me to speak about then. I'm going to come in and let you guys know how mine is going. And then I'm going to put on the link and we're going to have a serious discussion about how we're actually optimizing individually during this solar eclipse. I'm actually going to put out in the community tab about who wants to be on the panel for next week. I know you're going to be out here, Chaley. But yeah, we're going to get like a little group of us to like have some dialogue and compare basically and see how our classes are going and maybe see where we can kind of like find some symmetry and maybe see where we can learn as well. Oh, maybe I could have handled this situation differently, or maybe I could have done this in that situation as opposed to what I did then. Because I think obviously it's always nice to have some feedback. You know what I mean? I personally love feedback anyways. Let me speak for myself. I love feedback because I'm realizing when I give people feedback and they haven't asked for it, they're like, bitch, who asked you? And I'm like, I thought I was giving you gems, like, so it's just one of those things. But next week, we're going to have a proper catch up and really just like dive into it. I that part, right? That part. Exactly, Jamie. Because I'm like, oh damn, was that too much? But I really actually I like getting feedback. I'm here to really optimize my human because I want to be like the greatest I can be in this body. And this human's really good, actually. She's for the most part. I mean, she comes kicking and streaming, but she'll do it. She's not like, oh yay, but she's like, She's more about, But no, on that note, guys, I'm gonna stop talking because I've already like talked you guys' ears off. Look out for the details in the community tab because I'm probably not going to do it today. I'll probably do it on the weekend once I've got some time because your girl's busy. But I think on Friday, I'm working like 3 jobs. On Friday, I'm working my day job, my evening jobs, and then I'm coming to do this. So I'm going to be hella busy. And then Saturday's mum's birthday. So look out for it on the community tab on Sunday. I'll put the memo out there for us to kind of like get a little, whoever wants to come out and be on the panel and we just have a discussion about how the solar eclipse is actually changing our lives. Good luck, guys. I'm sending you guys so much positivity. I'm rooting for you guys. I'm sending you guys so much love, like fairy sprinkles. Yay. That part, guys. Just enjoy it. Okay. I'm gonna love you guys and leave you guys before Martin come, start banging it down. And then my demons flare up because I'm really doing a lot to kind of like contain her right now. That part. I keep having to bring her back to love. So I'm gonna go before Martin takes me out of love. That part. Love you guys. I am hoping that you guys have a phenomenal week. Thank you guys for stopping into the space, and I will catch you guys on Friday. We go get. Sorry, I'm like hearing a song in my head. I don't know where they're getting this. Like, I think it's like a 20s track. I don't know why they're making it seem like it's so lit, but they're doing their thing. It seems lit in my mind. On that note, guys, love you guys. Bye. You guys have a good week. You too as well, Chady. Enjoy your week. You deserve it. Mwah.
All the things they said to hold her back, they never seem to leave her head and tend to keep her mind at war. All the things they said to hold her back, they keep her locked inside of all the times when she's been hurt before.
Bye. That part. See you guys on Friday.